Hello, world. This is the Brother to Brother Show. I'm your host, K Mo. Thank you for taking this journey with us with real men, real problems, real solutions. Let's go. All right, we're back to the Brother to Brother Show. I'm your host, K Mo. I'm here with a guest today. Goes by D Hodge, and he is a true friend of mine. I've known him for a long period of time. We actually went to school together. But he's here today because our topic talks about is life after marriage. And so, at the Brother to Brother Show, we have conversations around health, internally, and outwardly too. And one of the things that a lot of guys come here and listen about is about how do you process certain things when you're going through difficult moments. And High said he would definitely feel comfortable having this conversation because he has been married before. So D High, just tell a little bit about yourself, and then we'll go right into the questions today. All right.
All right, thank you, man. Good to be on. It's a little bit about myself. I reside in Atlanta, Georgia. I work as a consultant and technology consultant in the sales performance management space. I've been doing that for about 2006. And originally from Maryland.
Okay.
So, that's about it.
Okay. So again, when I was talking to you offline about it, and I know you've heard a couple of the episodes, but for one, thank you for being on and being able to be vulnerable and talk about something like this, because a lot of our listeners have gone through this. A lot of the females want to know too, like, how do you, after dating somebody who's been previously married, what does that look like? But just go into like your situation and how did you go about getting married?
You said, how did I go about?
Yeah, I know you got married, at an earlier, in your 20s, right?
I got engaged at 29, married at 30.
Okay, all right. So,
basically.
So talk a little bit about, like, what was that process like? Were you ready? Did you feel like she was the one? Like, what was that thought process growing up for you? Let's not even get to that yet, but even the thought process growing up, and how did you think about marriage?
Sure. So, when I was in my early mid 20s, I didn't really have a strong desire to get married at that age. I just kind of dated. I had a girlfriend in college, and we dated, from towards the end of college, and then a few years after graduating, and then was single and getting ready to move from. I was living in Charlotte, North Carolina at the time, getting ready to move to Atlanta, and really didn't have any desire to start dating anybody seriously. And then, I met my ex-wife, and, things just kind of progressed. At the time, I was probably like 25 or so when we met.
Right.
And, still didn't really think about getting married, but then we ended up living in the same city, and then moving in together. And, it kind of just progressed because at that age, in your later 20s, you have more people around your age group starting to get engaged and get, married. Because you kind of have that first wave of people right out of college and the second wave of folks like around 30. And at the time, I felt like, she kind of checked the boxes from a, kind of good match standpoint.
Right.
Besides, just like the physical thing as far as being attractive and things like that. But, I just thought that it was kind of like the next step and the right thing to do.
Okay.
At the time.
Now, do you come from a place where you saw relationships, or your parents married or together, or?
Yeah, so my parents are married. They're still together. They got married to each other later. I think they were like 30, mid 30s or so. And so I mean, I know their marriage was perfect, but stuff together and things like that. So, kind of, seeing them and, from interacting with other people in the church I went to, they kind of were part of like a married couples group. And,
right.
So you kind of got to interact with like other, kids that you became friends with. They also had married parents and things like that. So, I mean, I was around folks who were, married.
So in your head at that moment, 25, 26, 27, you thought that was the next thing to do. And historically, that's from your past and what you were brought up to see. So tell me about, like, what did you see in her? I know she checked those boxes at the time, but at that particular time, if you can go back, like, what were some things that you really, like, what were your deal breakers to say, this is the person I want to marry?
Yeah, I think it wasn't, I think at the time, I put a premium on someone who kind of had the same, like, educational aspirations or educational background as me.
Right.
Not necessarily the same profession, but just, like she, went to college, went to grad school, smart, ambitious young lady. And, black, chick, and, kind of saw us as like a good match with somebody that I could, grow with. Now, of course, I didn't just do that because I didn't get married to her just because, like, it was like a resume type of thing. And also, I did care about her and
absolutely,
for the future.
Right. Okay. And I'm asking you these questions for a reason, because I'll go into that after this question. So at what point during the relationship did you feel like, what challenge, I'm sorry, even before that point, what were some of the challenges you started having or seeing once you all, were together and married?
Yeah. So, I mean, like, honestly, we didn't, when we first got together before we got married, we didn't necessarily have the same, let's say, philosophy around, like, money and like savings and things like that.
Yep.
So that was a little stressful, and that could have been like a red flag, right? The other thing was, I guess, when we were dating, so after we got married, so, some things change, right? I think things change all the time until we get married, right?
Right.
And I think that one of the things for me was just around, like, when we dated, she would cook, for example.
Right.
Married,
Yeah.
That kind of stopped. And now part of it is because, like, I started cooking and I started to really like to cook.
Right. Yes.
So I was just better at it, so I could cook more often. But I guess there were times when I would want her to, make an effort to cook, like, once or twice a week, and like ordering in, so there's, like, things like that, I think the philosophies around, like, how, like, savings and money, it got better, but it definitely wasn't where I wanted it to be.
Can you talk a little bit about that? Because we've had conversations around that with some another man. But what's your philosophy? It may be different than other people's.
Well, when I was younger, I was, into, I didn't really, come out of college, didn't have a job where I was making a whole ton of money, but I still was very much into, savings and being frugal and things like that.
Right.
So, in Atlanta, people want to, definitely a, flashier city at the time, and, people kind of want to, get the nice cars and things like that. And I was still on my mindset of, let's, like, save and chill.
Yeah.
Below our needs. Right?
Absolutely.
So, she just didn't, she understood that, and not like she was just going against me on things, but, like, there was a few incidences where she just would run up some, certain amounts of debt and things like that, and I had to, like, help bail her out, and that just.
This is during the relationship. This is during the marriage or before? Oh, yeah, we got some marriage.
This is before.
Gotcha.
This is before. I mean, during the marriage, it was, there's a few things where I was just like, I don't understand why you did that.
Right. Yep.
But like for example, like trading in a perfectly fine car to get an even newer car because the person at the dealership talks her into it.
Right. Yeah.
So so that these little things can build up, right, to be like issues in a marriage. Yeah.
So you mentioned, is it one more jewel that you can just drop that speaks about another issue? You said it sounds like some of the initiatives that she did before she was married. Now she was married, and again, it may not be anybody's fault, but because of what you just mentioned, you mentioned the finance, which I feel like is a huge thing. And then, is there anything else that you feel like this is it right here? I can't do it.
I think that honestly, like when we were married, I probably wasn't the greatest communicator. You know what I mean? Like, I would let little things kind of build up, and then, we'd have not a lot of fights, but it could boil over, right? And I think, that's the money management, the cooking, the communication were just things that we just weren't aligned on, right? And I think that ultimately led to us just not being able to stay in the marriage.
Right.
Now, I think that both of us have grown and
absolutely
learned a lot afterwards.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Like, we're still cool to this day, and she'll say that, she now cooks all the time.
Right.
And I think I was a better communicator. But I think those little things, when you're younger, like 30, still, pretty young, you just don't know. And I think it just we weren't aligned on these types of things.
Now, before we go to the next, I have two major questions, but I want to start off with this one first. What was her how was she brought up? Does she have both parents or anything like that? I know you said you saw the parenting and the church relationship with your parents, but was it anything like that, or was she came from a single parent, or?
Yeah, no, she had both parents growing up. Her father passed right after we met, but growing up as a kid and for the part of her adult life, she
Gotcha. Yeah. So the next question. So do you think it's wise to get married before the age of 30 for a man or a woman?
I think honestly, like for guys, we just don't. Most guys, I don't think we're ready until probably like mid-30s.
Yeah.
I don't think it's impossible, but I just think that and for women in general, they mature faster, right? So they're kind of probably in a better mental state to get married in their 20s.
Right.
But for us, I think that being honest, we're not really ready. I don't think to focus on just one woman at that time. You know what I mean? And everything that comes along with what can happen in a marriage. Like I said before, I don't think any dude is really a great communicator in their 20s, right? Or most aren't. Right? Like that's something I feel like you learn as you get older.
What's something that you if you were to get married now, and that's another question I want to ask you, but if you were able to get married, what would you tell your 29-year-old self about that marriage?
I'd probably say that you probably don't need to be with this person. You know what I mean? Like, I probably should have, just kind of said, hey, like, let's just go our separate ways. No.
Go a little deeper than that. Like, what do you mean you don't need to be with that person? Is it because you weren't ready, or you feel like just the person in general was not what you because at that time that's what you thought that you wanted, but is it something else?
I think it was both. I think it was that I wasn't ready. I don't think I was completely true with who I wanted to who I wanted to be with.
Yeah.
And then I think as far as getting married again, I honestly don't think I'll get married again.
Okay.
Not that I want to be out here like dating a bunch of women, but I think I'm just okay with just having like a life partner at some point.
Okay.
And keeping the government out of my finances, you know.
Okay. Talk to me a little bit about that, because I find a lot of my friends maybe when yours was, I think you were married for a couple of years, so you were mid-30s maybe when that happened, right? Or early 30s. It didn't last too long, right?
I was 34, 35 when we split up.
Okay. All right. So still fairly young. And now it's been a couple years later, but I find the men that I speak to, and I'm very inquisitive, man. I ask guys stuff all the time, and I just pay attention to it because I want to know for my future. And so I find a lot of guys, when they get to be, if it happens around 40, mid 40s, and they have a divorce, that's when they say, hey, I really don't want to get married again, or I just want a life partner. Why do you feel like, coming from that, the background that you come from, is it something that you may not want to do anymore, besides the government and whatnot? And if you find somebody who's perfect, right, and she says she wants to get married, is that a deal breaker for you?
I don't think it's a deal breaker. It's just something that I'm not really focused on right now.
Okay.
So, I mean, I'd say this to you today that like I don't think I'll get married again. But if this came down to somebody that I really, loved and saw like a long-term future with,
right?
I could potentially change that. But right now, even if I find something that that I love, and I don't see the need for me to like push the marriage thing. You know what I mean?
Gotcha.
I feel like I also just feel like in general, like, there's just not a lot of completely happy married people. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So like, I don't want to be with somebody and then they get like irritated with something I do, and they're like, all right, I'm out. I'm getting divorced and I'm taking half.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like that happens, right?
Yeah.
So I'd rather let's just be together. Let's be happy, and we can be committed and everything. But I just don't feel like you have to be married to have all these things.
Okay. Tell me about life after the marriage. What do you feel like? Because I'm just gonna dive much deeper now. I ask a lot of my friends this, and I'm like, so as men, we've been taught to kind of keep things in and just suck it up, keep it moving, push through things. That's just generally what we've been told. I think the younger generation is a little bit different. I had one of my a good friend of mine. He actually lives in Georgia. I used to work with him not too long ago. Actually, it's over 5 years ago, and he's happily married. And I ask him all the time, how do you do it? Because he got married, he was 25, and he got married during a time when you're like, man, you're supposed to be out. You're supposed to be in the streets and stuff. He was like, but his wife, the one he met, he said it was no question about it that she was the person that she was the person he needed to be with. And I asked him, I said, a lot of guys who go through that same thing, and I even contested to it as well. I said, I just couldn't have done it at that age. I thought I might have thought I wanted a real relationship and things of that nature, but to move to the next level and see a future with somebody, I just wasn't even at the place, even if I was dating somebody seriously. And I look at some of the things that we talked about earlier, and I had a pastor on here on my podcast to talk about 5 different things for a successful relationship, and 2 out of the 5 are actually I wrote down that you said, right? And I feel like a lot of times that for men, we don't have the guidance to ask the right questions and vet the women that are supposed to be in our lives, because this finance thing, communication thing is hands down like the bigger things that you need to talk about. And a lot of people, they stray away from it. They're afraid of it. And, you know, as you know, any situation that you may go through with work or family and stuff like that, these difficult conversations have to be had for you to even see, you know, someone in your future. So I asked you right after, you know, you were, you got back out there. How was that dating life for you? Did you date? Did you go out? Do you feel like you've done the work after that? Or if you didn't, what were some of the things that you felt, you know?
Yeah. So, after, I mean, like right after we split up, you know, I didn't like jump right into like the dating scene per se.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, I mean, in Atlanta, it's not things kind of can happen quick, right?
Yeah.
It's not so hard to find somebody. So, you know, not seriously dating, but kind of just like out there and kind of, you know, hanging out with whoever I hung out with. And then this was around the time that I think like a year later is when like the dating apps became big, like Tinder, and Bumble and things like that. So, you know, that kind of helped to kind of get me out to like kind of date more and stuff like that, and kind of figure out like, you know, what type of, you know, lady you want to spend your time with, that kind of thing. And then I think it wasn't until probably 2 years, I want to say, after I got divorced, is when I actually got into a relationship. Because so for me, I traveled for work a good bit with my job, and where I was going, I basically was out there for a year and a half, and I met somebody, and I was kind of reluctant to get into a relationship, and I should have not done it because we ended up breaking up after like a year because I just wasn't ready. But you know, I think that experience was needed, and it was a good one because it kind of helped me like go through that, take away from that what I liked, what I didn't like, and then go to the next one. Right? And I think, you know, initially after we split up, it was kind of tough, like mentally and that kind of thing. Just, you know, kind of having to deal with everything, and you know, you lose certain relationships that you had when you were with somebody in a marriage because you have joint friends,
absolutely,
and things like that. But I'm glad I kind of went through it because it definitely, like, after I got through all the mess and everything, I felt like I was in a much
better space.
You know, better place. Like now.
Yeah. You know, it's funny. We're having this particular topic because I actually talked to one of a young lady that I met, still care about to this day as a friend, but I love her to death. She's moved on, married, has kids and whatnot. And we had a conversation briefly. And one of the things that we discussed was the fact that, you know, the person that she is now is definitely not the person she was 15 years ago. And what I mean by that is it's bigger than just, you know, some of the things that people are facing or having issues with right this minute are the same things that we're having conversation about. That if you knew those things first and were able to go through some of those things, because I feel like as a man, you know, it's so much that's put on our plate, and we're still expected to do a lot. As much as I would say, oh, you know, things have changed and things are equal, women still expect and look to us for certain things and guidance. And one of those things is hard for us is the communication, because, you know, I've heard other men that talk about this, you know, depending on how you were brought up, like we didn't have conversations like that. It was kind of hush hush. It was, you know, we talk about it, or you were able to say something, but you maybe some situation you weren't able to say anything. But that doesn't create a healthy relationship when it's now time for you to be the man, for you to step up, for you to say stuff and say, hey, and then how do you deal with that? You know, how do you deal with at this point in our lives where, you know, yes, she might leave, but, you know, hopefully you would have done the work first. So you'll know what the type of person that this person is. And again, you know, as you know, sometimes people just show their butts later on, you know, but I feel like if you're asking the right question and you're seeing the person for who they really are, you won't miss out on some of those things that you missed when you were 27, 28, and 29. So, yeah. So how's everything going now? That was what, 5-6 years ago now. You said you've had the relationship. Were you able to look at some of the things in that next relationship that you saw about yourself? That you saw a growth or an area that you were like, hey, I took this away from this last relationship and I can take it into hopefully my partner.
Sure. So I think the biggest thing for me is communication. Like I definitely feel I'm a much better communicator than I was, when I was married, when I first was divorced.
Right.
And what I take from that, I mean, that kind of is the basis for everything, right? Like communication is important for,
it's number one. Yeah.
And emotional, right?
Right.
So like what happens, and it allows you to say, hey, like if somebody's doing something that you don't like, instead of just like holding it in, you can communicate and say, hey, look, I don't appreciate like if you do X, Y, and Z, and not have it be necessarily an argument. It's just saying like, you're being open and communicating, because communication also is not just always about arguments. It's also about like
understanding,
affirmation, stuff like that, right? Which helps the woman feel more secure in the relationship. So I think that I've definitely been a lot. Like that's the biggest thing I think that I've taken away.
Okay. All right. Yeah, man. So those are all the questions I have, but I definitely appreciate you being on and having this conversation, life after marriage, because I feel like a lot of guys go through this. I have seen a lot of my friends. I'm sure you see a lot of your friends that you have these conversations with people, and a lot of people will say after marriage, well, if this doesn't work, I'm out. I don't want to get married ever again. And I don't think that's I don't personally feel like that's I haven't been married before, but I don't feel like that is the right mindset to have, even though I understand it's more so about a partner, and hopefully you can build a relationship with a friend for the rest of your life, because a best friend is not going to divorce you. And I feel like that's whatever people decide they want to do, if they want to get married or not, I'm always pushing for that. But I feel like before we even get married, I have to feel like this is my best friend, and my best friend will never do anything to hurt me intentionally, do anything to hurt me, in any type of way. And if they do, we're able to have a conversation about it and move past it. And that's the type of person that I feel like anybody seeks. They just don't know how to get there, and they don't know the proper questions, like we talked about. Whoever's listening to this, hey, communicate about, because I do the same thing. No lie. Somebody cooks. I love to cook. However, because I like to cook all the time, some women may feel like, oh, well, that's one check box I don't have to worry about, because you like, no, just because I like to cook doesn't mean I don't like somebody to cook, not just as much, but occasionally, because, that's something that's a survival skill. That's something that everybody has to do. And you don't want to go out to, you look at COVID, like you can't go out to eat as much, especially at the beginning. So people had to learn to deal with each other and figure things out. And some things probably came to light because of this situation. Hopefully, people are pushing through it. But, thanks so much, D Hodge. Thank you, listeners. We signing out at KMO. Please go to the website, check out tomorrowsmen.com. Check out Brother to Brother Show and listen to Life After Marriage. Please know we love you. Work with us, be with us, and know we're coming from the heart. This is the Brother to Brother Show.